Good evening, everybody. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Madam Clerk, will you take the roll call, please?
Councilmember Bill De La Pena.
Present.
Councilmember Engler.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Adam.
Here.
Mayor McCoy.
Present. I'm going to move over to the podium for a special presentation. Tonight, we're going to begin our special presentation, and I'd like to invite Jill Lederer, who has served as a CEO of the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce for the past 11 years. Come on up, Jill.
Hello. Thanks.
I'm going to call you Admiral.
Okay.
Well, I want to share with you why Jill's up here. Jill is retiring from the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I want to share a little bit about that. During her tenure, the Chamber has been awarded 5-star accreditation by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and 11 consecutive President's Circle Awards from the California Chamber of Commerce. Get them up. She has worked to increase tourism to our area and has found ways to support our community during our most difficult days. Our city and business community have benefited greatly from Jill's leadership, and she prepares to leave Thousand Oaks for the shores of North Carolina. We'd like to recognize Jill for her many years of service to our city and wish her much happiness in her retirement, and we have something special for you.
It's beautiful.
You want me to hold it while you say something?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Mayor McCoy, thank you so much. Thousand Oaks City Council, it's such an honor to be here. I've been in front of you many times before. I chose Thousand Oaks for my home and to build my business so many years ago in 1983. I stumbled here by mistake, actually. We got off at the wrong exit and we knew we were home. It has been everything I could have asked for and more, and I am so grateful and so proud to call Thousand Oaks my home. I'm grateful for the relationships that we've built, the work that we've done together. Thousand Oaks is indeed our premier city, and we have been so very proud to be your chamber. I thank you all so much for everything you've done for the business community, for me. I can't tell you how much my heart is going to miss you and how grateful I am to each of you and how much you will always be a part of my heart. I actually have somebody to introduce to all of you today, and I'd like to bring actually 2 of my team members down here to join me. So many of you know, because you're so involved in the business community, you know the amazing team that operates the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce. There are 11 of us full-time people. I know the face you see most often is Adam Haverstock, our Director of Government Affairs and Tourism, and the Operations Director for the Conejo Valley Tourism Improvement District. And I couldn't be happier than to tell you that my replacement, the woman who's going to succeed me as CEO, is someone who has been with the Chamber by my side for the last 7 years. And I would very much like to introduce you right now to Danielle Borgia, who will be taking over CEO of your Chamber on January 6th, 2020. And Danielle, this is the Council and City staff.
Good evening. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces up here, and I am born and raised in the city of Thousand Oaks and so proud to be serving in this new role in 2020 and very much look forward to leading your chamber and continuing Jill Lederer's legacy in this community.
Jill, I'm going to have someone come up in a minute also to bring you a commendation, but I did want to say on a personal note, when I first became a council member, the very first scheduled meeting I had was with you, and you made me feel so welcome. You have a lovely way about you, and we're going to deeply miss you. So thank you for all your service to this community. And we brought in the heavy hitter, so we've got Assemblywoman Jackie Irwin, and she came all the way from Sacramento to do this, so get ready.
not quite all the way from Sacramento, but maybe from down the street. Thank you very much, Mayor McCoy, council members, city manager, city attorney, and staff. And it is really bittersweet. I knew Jill, I met Jill when I first started running. All the way back then, she was there and giving a hand, and she taught Nancy Frawley, who's right back here, my campaign manager, everything she knows about working hard and getting people elected. Jill is, as many of you probably have heard, she is tremendously accomplished, and you go back to her working at Domino's and then somehow attaining a chain of Domino's restaurants. And as she was also teaching at Pepperdine, but what a tremendous role model for young people to see somebody so successful come and speak, and I know that they really appreciated your involvement. And after she sold off those Domino's, she should have had a well-earned retirement, but Rick Lemo had a different idea, and after a few glasses of wine, Jill was convinced to join the chamber as president. And back in those days, there were a couple of chambers actually right here in the Conejo Valley, and they basically changed the name to the United Chamber, got the whole community together, and she has done really a tremendous job. As you heard, how many times they've been platinum chambers and 5-star chambers. Jill is very competitive. She wants to make sure that she is completely at the top, and they've been very involved in the community with things like the borderline fire and borderline and the fires and Teacher of the Year. But what we always say here in Thousand Oaks is that small businesses are really the backbone of our community. We have a very high quality of life here, a lot of open space and a lot of other goodies that basically are enabled by the success of our small businesses. And that's why it's so important to have a chamber that really works hard to educate people, to allow people to network, to make sure that businesses can be successful. And somebody that had the experience that Jill had with her Domino's chain was really the best possible person that we could ask for. So, Danielle, you really have a hard act to follow, but I know that the whole council will be behind you. And Jill, and by the way, Jill was my Woman of the Year last year for the 44th Assembly District. Jill, it's very bittersweet to have you go, but certainly it's incredibly well earned, and I wish you all the best in your retirement.
Council, come on up. Let's take a photo. Let's go get a photo up here. Madam Clerk, will you announce the public comments?
This is a time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for public hearing items shall be called and heard during the public hearing. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole, and all documents for City Council and the official record should be presented to the City Clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the council unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city manager for administrative follow-up. 6 individuals have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you very much. Our first speaker tonight is Billy Martin, followed by Mark Avatisian. Good evening, sir.
Thank you. Oh, there's the timer. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Jill. We haven't always seen eye to eye at some times, but that's probably because I was wrong. And I did want to say, too, before I started out, this whole memorial was just unbelievable. I know everybody up here knows it, and they've heard it from every single person that's been involved and whoever did the publicity. I'm astounded. My sister in Queens said she heard it on 1010 Winds, New York, several times that day, so congratulations. The next item I'd like to talk about is the Main Street, what are we calling it? The Main Street project in front of the Civic Arts Plaza. And the first thing I'd like to say is that I'm greatly impressed with what has been come up with here. It's a highly creative, very complex item to put forward, and you know, I'm sure there's going to be some obstacles, but if we can get anywhere near that, I think we'll be in really good shape. It will change the complexion of the city. And a couple of years ago, I suggested what I called the South Side solution, which was to work on only the one side of the street. And what I see for phase 2 of this is to take Main Street and shoot it out to the cul-de-sac and get rid of Shantytown, do an eminent domain thing, and wipe those 70-year-old shacks out, and see if we can relocate Leslie's and AutoZone and put in some nice restaurants. But I do advise, if this is the only way this is going to happen is to do the kind of deal that we did with the lakes, I would say that's a huge mistake. I think any businessman never would have made a deal like that. And I have it on good authority that P.F. Chang's and California Pizza Kitchen are 2 of the busiest restaurants in this town, and that's at the cost of other restaurants in this town. We've lost a number of well-established restaurants, from Outback to Fridays to Applebee's to a number of different restaurants. I'm not sure there's a direct correlation, but I think a city like this could use some more restaurants like those. My final thing, 18 seconds, okay. The final thing is I'm going to bring up again to the council people my idea of the copper curtain. I think now is the perfect time. I've been told it's not time yet. 20 years, and it's time. It'll be a beacon towards this new project. It'll be welcoming to follow the memorial. This is a welcoming people here, and it even has a chance of supporting the oak trees, which are right now in great danger. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark, you're followed by Gary Hartung. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Reason I'm here tonight, my name is Mark Avatisian. I'm a 40-year resident of Ventura County. I attended Brookside Elementary, Medea Creek Middle School, and Oak Park High School. I'm here to represent the dozens of businesses in the community that are involved in the tobacco, vape, cigar, and convenience store business. Reason I'm meeting here today, I know nothing's been on your agenda recently, but we've been reaching out to each one of you over time now, trying to schedule a meeting to meet with you to discuss some of the issues surrounding our industry and how we feel, further regulation and intelligent regulation may help address some of the concerns and issues. My wife and I started a business here about 7 years ago. We've now serve more than 5,000 customers that are in our database. We've done over 200,000 transactions, and we've had 0 incidents of illnesses or deaths as related to nicotine-based e-liquids and e-cigs. Recently in the news, there's been conflation between the illicit black market THC vapes that are causing and have been identified as the causes of these illnesses and sicknesses and deaths. And while we understand there's also a concern about youth access to vape products in our community, we've had 3 sting operations at our location, all 3 of which we have passed, and received letters from governing bodies congratulating us on helping prevent youth access to these products. What we witnessed in the media and in our government is the conflation of 2 very different products in nature and ingredients. I also believe that these illnesses and deaths, especially after inaccurate and sometimes deceptive headlines by local and mainstream media, could have been drastically reduced if in fact more discussions within our community were welcomed. Instead, many found this as an opportunity to disparage our industry and responsible business owners, ultimately leading to what is now the fear of these harm reduction devices being removed to the thousands of people who have used them to quit traditionally harmful tobacco products. Just in the last few months, keep in mind 107,000 people have died from traditional tobacco products. Not one person has died from nicotine-based e-cig, e-liquid products. I want to make that clear. I've supplied you with the following documentation: recent FDA reports, recent CDC reports, all supporting these. I've also presented evidence showing that most children get these products either given to them or online. In fact, I think that totals about 70% per the studies that I've provided you in this. So banning products at a local level is not going to do anything to stop the illnesses and deaths or the youth use. So I invite you to look through the documents. Please reach out to me. My information's on there to schedule a meeting with local business holders and discuss regulation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Gary Hartung, followed by Anthony Angelini.
I recently moved here about 7 weeks ago, and last week I was talking to some construction people who are going to build something on a fairly large lot across the street from Tarantula Hill Brewing Company, and I said, well, what are you going to build here? They said, well, it's going to be affordable, low-income housing. And I said, well, how many units are you going to build? And they told me it was at least 90, maybe over 100, but only 10 or 12 were going to be low income or affordable. I'm not sure what the definition of low income or affordable is, but as I drive around Moore Park Road and Thousand Oaks Boulevard and a few other main roads here, I've seen a number of empty lots. Some of them are quite large. I think they all should be used for affordable housing. There is not enough of it. I have also noticed that as I drive up and down Thousand Oaks Boulevard, every quarter, half a mile, there's a hair or nail salon, massage parlor, restaurant, burger joint, taco shop, Asian buffet. We don't need that stuff here. There's more than enough of them. I really don't know why we need any more restaurants either, because as I walk by many of them, they're not even half full. So I think the city needs to make a much better convincing commitment to provide affordable housing. Thank you.
Excuse me. Anthony Angelini, followed by Adam Haverstock. Good evening, sir.
Hi. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for having me. My name is Anthony Angelini. I'm a resident of Westlake Village, and I am a board member of the Arts Council of the Conejo Valley, where I serve as the Events and Hospitality Director. The Arts Council is a network of over 40 local arts nonprofits in the city. It's sort of like a who's who of all the arts community in TO. If you want to go to the symphony, boom, New West is a member. If you want to go to a musical, 5-Star Theatricals is a member. It's like basically any art-related thing you want to do in town, you got to go through us first. So why am I telling you all this? Well, because last night, a lot of local arts people attended your city's cultural planning kind of workshop discussion here at the Civic Arts Plaza. A lot of them were empowered to voice their opinions on the direction of the general plan. I actually think a lot of the consensus was stating that it was good and that it was going in the right way and that it was great that we could get a voice among city council on this general plan. We really liked it. And specifically the Arts Council is very supportive of the general plan and the work and the cultural aspects that you've agreed to add to it. The Arts Council, and we're also working with the Thousand Oaks Boulevard Association and the Downtown Business District, we will make the arts part of every conversation that we have. And we would hope that you would include the cultural impact and the cultural aspects of every discussion in the general plan and every decision that you make. Right now, I'm just speaking as a board member of the Arts Council, and we don't have any specific thing that we're asking for. We just want to be included in the conversation. We just want you to think about that kind of stuff as you move forward with the general plan. Thank you for listening to us in the past, and we hope that you'll keep listening to us in the future. We are very powerful. We could, I don't know, paint unflattering portraits of all of you if we wanted to. No. But yeah, just please keep listening to us moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Adam Haverstock, followed by Billy Parrish. Good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Adam Haverstock, I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Tourism for the Chamber of Commerce with a couple items for you. First and foremost, I wanted to let you know we're doing the Thousand Oaks State of the City on Tuesday, December 3rd. It's going to be at California Lutheran University in the Gilbert Sports Center from 11:30 to 1:30. And we have a really great keynote that day. It's going to be the State of the City from Mayor McCoy, so I hope you all can make it. And for those in the gallery of the public that haven't gotten their tickets yet, they're available at our website, conejochamber.org. I wanted to let you know that the Chamber's Board of Directors held their retreat last week. We did accomplish some business there. We elected Tom Cohen from the law firm of Cohen, Began, and Deck as our 2020 chair of the board. So if you don't know Tom, he is a land use attorney. So you'll be seeing more of him in the coming year. The board ratified the decision of our executive committee to select Danielle Borgia as our next president CEO. And the board also ratified the Chamber's legislative agenda, which is the policy document that outlines our position on a variety of policy issues. I'll be emailing a copy of that agenda to the city clerk so you guys can all receive a copy. What I will tell you for those that have been on the board for multiple years, we didn't take any new positions on any issues or change our position on anything. Our positions are the same. It's just we like to reauthorize that document every year and distribute it for your reference. This coming week, actually on Thursday, the Conejo Valley Tourism Improvement District is going to hold its board meeting where it's going to approve its officers, its budget, and its marketing plan for 2020. And a quick little spoiler for our marketing plan for 2020, we are going to be doing a new program. We are bringing back Conejo Valley Restaurant Week. So that is going to be the week of January 27th through 31st of 2020. It's going to be run by the Tourism District. We are inviting restaurants now to sign up to participate. All you have to do is offer a discount off of your menu or some other, maybe a special promotion, something you don't normally cook or some sort of special pairing that we can promote on our website at conejo.com. And we're going to do a marketing campaign both to locals and to out-of-area people to hopefully have them come frequent our local restaurants. And if you didn't know, January is a really bad month for restaurants. Everybody eats and drinks themselves to death during December, during the holidays. They start their diet on January 1st, and so restaurants do take a hit. And so we think it's great timing to do something to support our local restaurant community. And so more to come on that. And unless there are any questions, that does conclude my report this evening.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Billy Parrish, followed by Bruce Boyer. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you. This is my name is Billy Parrish. I'm actually a recent transplant to Thousand Oaks, and this is my first time here, so very nice to meet all of you.
Welcome.
I am the current vice president of the Arts Council of the Caneo Valley, and I won't repeat anything that Anthony said. What I'd really like to reiterate is thank you to all of you for all of your work on the new general plan, and thank you for involving us and the rest of the arts in those conversations. As the voice of the arts for the last 50 years, we can't reiterate how much that does mean to us, and we are very excited to work with you and with the Thousand Oaks Boulevard Association moving forward to hopefully make this new downtown Thousand Oaks area a wonderful place for both businesses and the arts hand in hand. So thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you, Billy. Bruce Boyer, followed by Lori Lee. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Boyer, candidate for sheriff. So we've had a couple things happen since I last spoke to you. I would have liked to have attended the dedication ceremony. Unfortunately, before things started. Chief Hagel, I'm not pointing the finger at you, but whoever directed...
You can direct your...
I am trying, if you'll let me, Mr. McCoy. Mayor.
Keep doing it.
So, I'm not saying that Chief Hagel had me arrested, but somebody did, and somebody's fingerprints on it. Now, a question I get asked is, how can they arrest you for interrupting a public event that hasn't started yet? That's a very good question. My attorney laughed so hard he dropped his cell phone. But then again, if you've got people that just want to suppress the speech of people, I guess you can do whatever you want until you're held accountable for it. So we are going to have an accounting, and there are going to be fingerprints on it. So see if you can get your head around this. As a fully filed candidate for sheriff, I come to a public event, I can speak to people from anywhere I want, and my political opponent has his deputies abduct me. That happened in America, not in Venezuela or Nicaragua, but in America on a, oh, we're going to arrest you for interfering with a public event. I'll never mind that it hasn't started yet. If it hasn't started, it hasn't started. So we're going to have fun with that. Now, since the flag is still there, we are still in America, and we are governed by our Constitution. So to inform people what happened at the borderline, promoting the website borderlinetruth.com, I thought we should display some sign bikes around town in the event to let people know what's going on. But, you know, the boys that you hired don't like free speech. So apparently they seized them all. My attorney's got a letter to you. You have no legal authority to seize bicycles. Now, I may not be an expert on a lot of things, but the vehicle code and bicycles, yeah, that's one I know. You have no legal authority to seize bicycles. Hey, they're $100 a day to rent them. If you want to seize 12 of them, you can explain to these people why you're going to end up paying me $1,200 a day to have my bicycles locked up in some storage yard. And then we can deal with the other aspects of it, which says you violate people's rights when you seize their property without legal authority. Now, don't feel bad because there's more sign bikes coming out. Because people asked me, Bruce, how is it that there were 10 cops inside the borderline when shots were fired and none of them did anything? And I go, I don't know. They won't tell us and you won't tell people. How is it that after Helis is shot and bleeding, that none of the cops went in to save him or any of the other people inside for the better part of half an hour? Well, they're probably watching the video in the parking lot because Brian, the owner, has a fully interactive video and they can see what's going on. They left the people to die. Why did they do that? Why don't we get some answers? Because the answers are going to be very ugly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lori Lee, good evening.
Hi, thank you. This is my first one, so bear with me.
You're doing all
but
right.
I am here about the borderline as well, and I would like to give this to the clerk. This is a statement of
Could you announce where you're from, please? Where you're from?
From Ventura County.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to put this in. This is the only paperwork I could find on how the funds were distributed for the money that was collected for the victims. I personally know someone, and she was curious as to why her daughter was not involved in it. And this was all that I got, and there isn't any other lists on where the money went to?
Oh, okay. If you'll wait, we'll have one of the staff address it. You want to talk about it? Or if you'll just stick around.
Okay.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
And you can give that piece of paper if you'd like to our clerk. Ms. Bowers, you have any follow-up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just the question regarding funds distributed from the Borderline Fund. As the council and community, I think, are pretty well aware, those funds were managed and distributed under quite a bit of scrutiny through the Ventura County Community Foundation. Any questions about it can be directed to the Community Foundation. Their phone number is 805-988-0196. Again, 805-988-0196.
All right. Well, now we go on to item 7. Do we have a motion for the consent calendar? Councilmember Engler.
I would move for us to accept the 7A as presented.
Madam Clerk, will you prepare the vote?
The motion carries 5-0, and I have an ordinance title. It's an ordinance amending Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, Section 1.10-13 of Title I, Chapter 10 of the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code regarding future employment restrictions for former officers or employees for 1 year following termination of officer or employee.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 8A. Would you announce the public hearing, please?
Hearing advertised as required by law is open to consider agenda item 8A, 2019 California State Building Codes with local amendments, MCA 2019-70485, and at this time we do not have any public speakers.
Thank you. Kelvin Parker, Deputy Community Development Director, you're going to be leading this, I assume?
Yes, sir. That's the plan.
Take it over.
Thank you. Before I get too far into the presentation, I just wanted to take a minute and introduce staff here sitting next to me. Mark Town, as you know well, the Director of Community Development. To Mark's left is Steve Stewart. Steve served as interim building official here with the city for a number of months throughout this year. Prior to that, the past 10 years, Steve has served as contract building official with a number of cities throughout Ventura County, including the city of Ojai, the city of Fillmore, Goleta, and as well as the city of Solvang. The 25 years preceding that, Steve served as building official for the city of Santa Paula. And to Steve's left is Jeff Ware, our code enforcement manager, and currently acting in the interim capacity in the building division. The purpose of this item is to adopt the state building code with local amendments for Thousand Oaks. This is a process that the city has been through numerous times before. In terms of background, the California Building Code is based on the International Code Council, or ICC, which creates a national model for building code requirements. Various states throughout the country adopt those individually for that particular state. These code updates happen on a triannual basis. The last time it was heard here by City Council was in 2016. And these new amendments are expected to take place in January of 2020. The proposed ordinance in your packet will repeal the existing section of the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code and replace it with this 2019 edition of the Building Code, specifically with local amendments. The picture in the slide represents the building code as proposed by the state in its entirety. However, what you're dealing with in your packet is specifically the local amendments for Thousand Oaks as they relate to our community here. The vast majority of the building code as proposed by the state would not change at all, and we will implement them as is. Local jurisdictions have the ability to amend the state guidelines only in the event that they're more restrictive than what the state would allow. These amendments must be based specifically on climate, topographical, or geological conditions. The findings for making these changes is outlined in the ordinance, which is contained within your packet. From a local climate standpoint, Santa Ana winds are a condition that impacts Thousand Oaks on an annual basis. Most recently, it was felt by the events of the Hill and Woolsey fire that occurred within the last year. Because of this, there's changes proposed in the local amendments to help the city move forward based on lessons learned from those events. In terms of topography, the city of Thousand Oaks is surrounded by a ring of open space. And those steep hills and knolls create unique conditions for building, and it affects everything from mudslides or rock slides after, say, a fire event. And it also provides a habitat for fire to move quickly uphill. And because of that, there are changes proposed locally to address those conditions. From a geologic standpoint, this map shown on this screen is from the Thousand Oaks safety element in the general plan. It shows soil conditions throughout the city of Thousand Oaks. And because of our unique soil conditions and earthquake faults that run throughout the city, there are proposed changes in the amendment to address those conditions. Although there are many changes proposed in your packet for this particular item, the three most important are of note relate to inauguration of building permits would be changing from 6 months to 1 year. Adoption of the International Property Maintenance Code, which would help staff on the code compliance side move forward and enforce those regulations throughout the city. And most importantly, a change in building tile to go from a Class B to a Class A tile, which is more fire resistant. It has a higher ignition point in terms of when it would catch fire from fires, and it lasts longer than type B, which is typically about an hour to 2 to 4 hours for Class A tile. Public notice was provided to various agencies that are impacted by the proposed changes here in Thousand Oaks. As of the hearing tonight for this item, there have been no comments received on that. With that, staff is recommending that City Council introduce an ordinance to adopt the 2019 California Building Code with local amendments as required by the findings in the ordinance. And with that, staff is available to answer any questions council may have at this time.
Kelvin, I have one question. With the need for housing in the state, why would the state increase the time for building permit from 6 months to 1 year?
That's just in the time that a person has to act on a building permit after it's been pulled.
Okay. Councilmember Bill de la Peña.
Thank you, Mayor McCoy. Good evening. I have several questions, actually. Given what we went through 1 year ago, starting with Northern California, Paradise, the Hill Fire, the Woolsey Fire, has the building industry made any requests or have they made suggestions as to how to improve building standards? Or is this all the direction from lawmakers? Is it? I'm trying to find out.
Mayor, members of the council, the building industry per se has not requested any additional requirements to be imposed on construction. The California Building Code actually has provisions within the code for what we call very high fire hazard areas that impose additional requirements on buildings, such as the Class A roof, fire protected walls, tempered glass in windows, and E-vents that are fire resistive for embers and sparks. So there's a lot of elements that are within the code. Staff took a look at that during our preparation of the code that's before you this evening, and we felt after analyzing that from a cost-effective standpoint and taking a first step, the incorporation of Class A roof from Class B roof would be a good first step. But of course, we could incorporate additional elements if the council so choose to, but that was staff recommendation.
My question is, as I was seeing all of these homes that were burning, why isn't there more of a push toward, and thankfully Class A, that makes sense, why is there not a push toward ICF's insulation concrete forms? Because those are fire resistant, hurricane resistant, and add about 2% to the overall construction cost. And homes in Malibu, some of them are being built using ICFs. Why is there not more of a push? As long as a house is built out of wood, it's going to burn. But with the ICFs, there is a delay in the burn itself. Do you know why that is?
I think the State Building Standards Commission, who promulgates the California codes, I think they looked at all of those elements, but needless to say, they cover the entire state, and they're trying to achieve a balance in the updated requirements. I would think in the future codes that they will continue to add elements in there to provide higher fire resistive requirements, but at this time it hasn't been incorporated in the code.
I would imagine that insurance companies would be very happy if homeowners were to build homes that are made out of material that is much more resistant. So is that something, and this is a question from Mr. Town perhaps, it says in the presentation by Mr. Parker, it said that we could have stricter standards, stricter than what Sacramento is allowing or saying, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, Mr. Parker, maybe you too. I'm just so used to Mr. Town. But so if we were to, can we come up with a policy that would encourage the use of different building materials, such as ICFs, and to make sure that the homeowner knows that this material is available and a much better protection of your investment?
That's something that staff can look into, but we would have to coordinate with our community development partners to talk about that and have dialogue. And it's something that Director Town, I believe, could take as direction, and we can move forward and take a look at that and report back to City Council.
Because Woolsey is not going to be the last wildfire that we're going to see. So if this is not making an impression on the building industry, perhaps, or the commission, then I don't know what will. Obviously, we need to start thinking differently about protecting our investment, meaning homeowners' investments, and using materials that are going to withstand, or not withstand, but be more resistant. So if we could do that, I would really appreciate that.
As Mr. Parker indicated, staff would be happy to look into that and bring a report back to City Council.
Thank you.
Insulated concrete forms. Gotcha. You're getting real technical on us, sir. Councilmember Engler?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mr. Town, I suppose. In terms of, we could always have very restrictive codes. I mean, we can make type 1 or type 2 fire resistive type requirements in any interface area, but is that going to add a very high price to a home? And what have you looked in that type of result?
Well, the short answer is yes. It would add probably significant cost to a typical home. I think if part of my recommendation back to the director would be to give you information in regards to the current code requirements that we impose on very high fire hazard areas. I do know that County Fire is looking at the mapping now based on the state's revised mapping, and there'll be parts of the city which may be included that will have to have the higher fire resistive requirements imposed on it by state statute.
Yeah, I think the cost, and I agree with Councilmember Bill De La Pena, the cost is always an issue, but also so is replacement cost. Are there any other more cost-effective ways other than building types that would improve survivability in fire?
Yes, sir, there are, and I think the provisions that are within the current California Building Code for a very high fire hazard area incorporates those elements, and I can't give you an exact cost of what those upgrades would cost, but it would be an additional cost for typical construction.
Is there after construction such as fuel reduction zones and that sort of types of things that the fire district now requires? Is that something that would also be of value?
In the urban interface in the very high fire hazard area, yes. Could those be incorporated in other parts of the community? Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena.
Thank you, Mayor McCoy. I just wanted to restate that the cost that I've been told by contractors who are building homes, ICF homes in this region, the cost is approximately 2 to 3% higher than a standard home. So that was about 6 months ago.
And if I just may, and we would obviously look at those cost factors as part of our analysis and then report back to you.
Any, well, I guess we can close the hearing. It's closed. All right, council discussion, or would we like a motion? Mayor Pro Tem Adam?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I am glad to see that the primary amendment in this is the upgrading of the roofing materials from B to A. We lost, 38 homes in the Woolsey fire, and if you did anything, this was one of the most important things that I read in there, so I'm glad to see that. And, of course, one of the morals of the story is don't build in the wildlands interface, which we keep doing. Not here in Thousand Oaks particularly, but in other communities. So with that, I will move 8A, the California State Building Codes with the local amendments.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Madam Clerk, prepare the vote. No.
Mayor Pro Tem Adam, do you want to state your vote? Oh, there we go. The motion carries 5-0, and your ordinance title is an ordinance to repeal chapters 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 14, 16, and 17 of Title 8, and to amend chapters 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 14, 16, 17 to Title 8 of the Municipal Code, to adopt by reference the Title 24, 2019 California Code of Regulations, including the California Administrative Code, California Building Code, California Residential Code, California Existing Building Code, California Historical Building Code, California Fire Code, California Mechanical Code, California Plumbing Code, California Electrical Code, California Energy Code, California Green Building Standards Code, California Reference by Standards Code, and International Property Maintenance Code, MCA 2019-70485.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to item 10. It's a study session brought to you by Mr. Mark Town, our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. The purpose of this item is to describe progress to date on the General Plan Update program, including what we have heard from the community in terms of public input on the General Plan over the past several months. Matt Ramey, our general plan consultant, will be actually presenting this presentation. But before Matt starts, I did want to introduce a few individuals. First of all, to my right is Michael Forbes, who is the other Deputy Director in Community Development. He joined our team about 2 months ago, and it's relevant that he is sitting here because he is the city's coordinator for the general plan update. Mr. Forbes has over 20 years of experience in the planning field, including experience at the cities of Burbank, Glendora, and Temple City. Most importantly, he worked in 2 other comprehensive general plan updates, including Burbank and Temple City. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Forbes to his first official Thousand Oaks City Council meeting. I would also like to introduce 2 individuals in the audience tonight. Mr. David Pletner Saunders and Dr. Linda Flynn from the Cultural Planning Group. They are subconsultants to our general plan team and led the town hall meeting last night on arts and culture issues related to that element of the general plan. So we're very pleased that they are here tonight as well. And so with that introduction, I will now turn it over to Mr. Matt Ramey.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Ramey with Ramey Associates. Great to be back here in front of you all talking about the general plan and the work that we've completed to date. I am going to provide an update tonight. I'm essentially trying to tell the story of the first few months that we've had on the project. So it's going to be an update on the progress that we have for the general plan. We're going to give you a brief overview of existing conditions, review the results from the community engagement activities that we have completed to date, and then present preliminary draft first cut guiding principles for the general plan. I have qualified this one multiple times because it's meant to get the conversation going. And then after that, we look forward to comments and discussion about the information presented this evening. Here you have the project schedule. We are on about a 2-year or so process. We are into the listening and visioning part of the plan. So we're moving through and existing conditions, and listening and visioning are happening somewhat concurrently, but we have to date conducted a lot of community engagement, and we have 7 existing conditions reports that are currently in process, which will be wrapped up soon. So we are moving through the process. We are at this point pretty much on schedule for completing the project as we have outlined here. I'm going to take a minute and talk about some preliminary observations from the consultant team and from data on existing conditions today. Some of this may be obvious, some of it may be new information for all of you. I'm going to start with demographics and population characteristics. The city is just under 130,000 folks. It has grown from when this first general plan was adopted, and I believe there are about 35,000 people in the city in 1970. Throughout this information, you'll see comparisons to Ventura County or to the state, and we like to use these comparisons to show where the city is just relative to other jurisdictions. For the topic of race and ethnicity, Thousand Oaks is about 2/3 white, and that is actually significantly different than Ventura County as a whole, where it's 45% white. The real difference is here is the Hispanic Latino, where Ventura County is 43%, and the city of Thousand Oaks is 18%. The median age in Thousand Oaks is 43.5, which is much higher than Ventura County at 37.5. And overall, the residents of Thousand Oaks are more educated in terms of number of years in school than residents in Ventura County. For housing, the median property value in Thousand Oaks is higher than the county, $663,000 compared to $520,000. About 3/4 of the housing stock was built before 1990, and compared to the county, more people in the city own, which is 70%, than rent, about 30%. The county is 63% and 37%. For the economics, the median household income is significantly higher in Thousand Oaks at over $100,000 compared to Ventura County at $81,000, and the residents in poverty, defined as 200% of the federal poverty level, is much lower than Ventura County. 27.4% in Ventura County, 16.5% in Thousand Oaks. While it is lower, I also like to point out that the other way of looking at this is that 16.5% of the city's residents are living in poverty. And so while that number is, again, better than the county and I believe better than the state, there's still some work to do here in terms of poverty. Switching gears to land use, one observation that we had, that you all have told us about and that the community's told us about, is that one of the defining characteristics from land use is not what's built but what's not built. And that is the mountains and the hills, the views of those from throughout the city, and this really provides the character of the community. Another somewhat obvious observation is that the community overall is low density and has a suburban character. That is how the city was planned. That is how it was formed based on the vision in the 1970 plan. While this has many advantages, this also results in a large separation of land uses and a very auto-oriented pattern of development. And so the separation of uses and the auto-orientation means that it's very difficult for people to walk to get to services that they need, and they are left to drive. Driving, of course, causes traffic congestion, and it also leads to greenhouse gas emissions. Another comment and observation is that in the city there is no downtown area, which is why the downtown master plan is in process. But there's also really not any walkable main street areas, and areas that we call in the planning world the sort of the third places, the places that define the character, help define the character and identity of the community. The character of the community is more defined not by the places for people to gather and shop and eat, but really by the low-density character, the suburban character, the beautiful neighborhoods, and the topography. As I mentioned, open space really is parks and open space is really a defining characteristic of the city. About 45% of the total area, of the 55 square miles, about 45% is open space. And as you know, there are a number of property owners for the open space, the city, the county, the National Park Service, the state, and some of it is private and permanent open space. And so this really is, as you know, absolutely an amazing gem that the city has here for the open space and defines the character of the community. There are also quite a large number of public facilities that we see throughout the city. The public facilities here are really quite amazing based on our observations and comparison to other communities. The Conejo Valley School District has a number of schools distributed well throughout the community. There's this amazing building, the two libraries, the Thousand Oaks Teen Center, the Global Adult Community Center, fire stations, the police department, and then, of course, the Thousand Oaks Transportation Center. Throughout the process, and I'll talk about the engagement a little bit later, but one of the top ideas and concerns that we heard was about housing. And this came up in multiple different ways, but housing is really not only an issue in the state and the region, but it has come up as a topic of concern in the community. Therefore, it's really important to do a detailed analysis of what's going on in the community regarding housing. I had already presented the number about the cost of housing, the median cost of housing, but this information here provides the breakdown of the housing inventory according to the California Department of Finance. There are 2/3 of the units are detached. One unit attached is really kind of duplex and triplex. And that adds another 11%. And so the sort of the single family, the one unit attached and detached, is about 79% of the total, so almost 80% of the total. The median household income is higher, and as I said before, 70% of the residents own their own housing unit. Going back to the inventory, buildings with 5 or more units are only about 15%. So overall, there's a relatively low number of multifamily housing units and a relatively high number of single-family housing units or 1 unit attached. Jobs and economic development is also an important topic as part of the general plan. There are approximately 65,000 jobs in the city. Overall, Thousand Oaks is a net importer of jobs. There are 44,000 employees commuting into the city daily, and there are also 36,400 approximately residents who commute out of Thousand Oaks daily. And so what that means is that you have, quite obviously, you have people who live here who work elsewhere, and you have people who live elsewhere who come here. And that results in an imbalance of jobs and housing. It also results in some of the impacts that we've heard throughout the city of traffic congestion, particularly at certain times of the day and at certain intersections. Overall, there's about 7% of the total land area is for commercial and industrial uses, and these are some of the uses that actually help to generate taxes for the city to help pay for the public services that the public facilities and services that all of the residents enjoy. So they're very. It's a relatively low number, but a very high in importance. Bioscience, education, and healthcare are the top employers in the city and are really what's known as the base industries, the industries on which all of the others are support. For transportation, we wanted to pull out just a couple of the points here. There's a lot that we can dive into in transportation, and again, it was mentioned quite a bit in the community engagement process. But the chart on the left, as you see here, this is the commute to work mode split, or in plain English, how people get to work. And 80% of the people in the city drive alone to work. 9% work at home, which is actually a relatively high number. 7% carpool, and a very, very small number take public transit, walk, or bike to work. 4% of the total, which is typical of what we would see in more suburban and auto-oriented communities. On the right is vehicle ownership, which matches the trends that we've seen elsewhere, which is that that quite a large number of the households have 2 or more vehicles, and a very small number, although not insignificant, probably about 4 or 5%, have no vehicle at all and actually have to get around by transit, walking, or biking. Maybe that is reflective of the 4% that we see in the chart to the left. This map here shows very high fire severity zones, and it actually builds off of the previous item here. So a very large percentage of the city is in a very high fire severity zone. A lot of these areas are open space areas, but they also do move into the areas with urbanization, as in single-family homes, other housing, and then businesses. And so it's really important in the process to pay attention to this, as you all know, and make sure that we're making good plans for where development happens and then how that development is constructed. We also looked at health and equity. Overall, the city of Thousand Oaks is healthier than the county and state, as is evidenced by the information that you see here. The city has the highest life expectancy of any city in Ventura County. We look at the leading causes of death to understand if there's any differences, and they're pretty much the same for the first 2 causes of death, cancer and heart disease. This is important because the pattern of development and externalities can sometimes lead to causes of death that rise higher, such as cancers are actually one of them, but also different disabilities resulting from proximity to freeways and other places, and environmental pollution, and we don't see a lot of that here. Overall, residents, adults, are less obese than the county as a whole, 21.9% of adults in the city are considered obese. Again, it's lower than the county, but that means that over 1/5 of the residents are considered obese. There are lower asthma rates compared to the county, which is good. There's much lower crime rates compared to the county and the state as a whole. And again, overall, despite some of the statistics, the main one that really matters is that there's the highest life expectancy in the county, and so the Thousand Oaks residents are, by and large, healthier than the county residents in the county and the state. One of the things that we're going to do in the process and as part of existing conditions is to look into are there any populations or subpopulations that are have a health disadvantage compared to others, so we can address that through the built environment. With that overview, I'm going to shift gears to the community engagement results, because I think a lot of this is really the story of what we want to tell this evening. We started our community engagement process in late August, and so it's been just a couple of months. And overall, we have done quite a large number of community engagement activities. We've had stakeholder interviews, we've had an economic development focus group, a founders discussion, and that's with people, members of the community who were part of the 1970 master plan. We had a community workshop. We've had 3 general plan advisory committee meetings, an online survey, a community forum, which was an informational forum, 7 pop-up workshops, and then just last night we heard about the Arts Town Hall. Let me go into, first I'm going to go into detail on some of these events, and then the results, high-level results of what we found. So first is there is a project website, and the website, from what we can tell, is being used pretty regularly by the community. The website provides background information on the general plan and land use regulations. There's information on engagement, the agendas, notes, PowerPoints, everything that we have produced is up online. We have an online survey that I'll talk about in a minute, and we also have a widget to allow people to sign up to receive updates about the general plan, and so far we have approximately 500 people who have signed up for that. One of the core directional pieces for the general plan is the General Plan Advisory Committee, or GPAC. There are 24 members, as you all know. They represent a diversity of interests in the city. We've had 3 meetings to date. The first one was an intro to the general plan and a brainstorm on issues and opportunities. The second one, Mark Town gave a very informative presentation on land use, the city's land use regulations, so how general plan and zoning and other regulations work. And then just the other night, just last week, we had our 3rd meeting on existing conditions and developed the guiding principles, which we're going to talk about. The community is invited to attend the General Plan Advisory Committee meetings, and we make an effort at those meetings to make sure that if we have discussions that we hear what the public has to say as well. Overall, I'll say that just to editorialize a little bit, this General Plan Advisory Committee has been really great. They've been very interested. They're asking great questions. They're engaged, and they're providing really good feedback to us, both ideas, but also kind of giving us suggestions for how to move forward. So the purpose of the advisory committee, it has been great, and it really is serving its purpose. The first workshop was held, community workshop was held on September 12th at Los Robles Greens. This attracted over 125 people. For those who were there, it was absolutely a full house. We had to roll out more tables. We had people directing traffic. It started with open house activities where we asked people about demographics, what their vision was, where they live and work, and then where they participate in different activities throughout the city. We then broke into small groups and asked 3 basic questions, which are echoed in the pop-up workshops as well as the online survey, and what we're going to report on tonight, which is what makes Thousand Oaks unique and special. What are the issues that the city is facing, and what is your vision for the city? And again, I think the workshop went really well. The people were engaged in the conversation, and it was what was impressive to me was how members of the community were very respectful to one another when there were differences of opinion, which there were, but it was done in a respectful, conversational way where people said, I understand where you're coming from. And again, that's exactly what we want at these types of meetings. Because not everyone is willing to spend an evening hanging out with us, we had 7 pop-up workshops throughout the community. Pop-up workshops are where we take information. They were essentially some of the same questions and boards that we had at the community workshop, and we just went out into different locations in the community, and we tried to pick locations where we had a diversity of folks coming and a diversity of people who may not actually want to come out to a public workshop in the evening. These workshops, for those who stopped by and attended, were really a lot of fun. We had over 500 participants at these different events. And again, what was really, I think, important about this was that we had 2 things. One is we had people come up to us who said they'd never heard about the process and they were participating. And the second was appreciation from people that were coming out into the community. We're going to the people and asking them questions and asking their opinion and listening to what they say. On October 2nd, we had a community forum right here in this room, and Charles Montgomery, the author of The Happy City, talked about how urban form can impact people's lives. There were a lot of really interesting ideas that were presented, some of which definitely were stuck with people, and some of which resonated, and some of which didn't, which is exactly what we want. There was a great conversation afterwards on topics such as housing and growth and different types of urban form and how that impacts people's lives. And we're scheduling another community forum coming up in the next few months. We also have done an online survey. We've had nearly 500 responses. We asked 3 open-ended questions with this, in addition to demographic information. Again, what makes Thousand Oaks unique and special? What issues is the city facing? And what is your vision for the city? And then, as you heard, we're also doing a parallel arts and culture engagement process. Cultural Planning Group, who's here tonight, has done quite a number of stakeholder interviews, these folks as you see here, and held an arts town hall last night with 30 arts leaders, and I'm sure they'll be available to answer questions about information that they've found out throughout the process. As I believe I mentioned when we were starting this process, one of the activities that we do with engagement is we track who attends the activities. And we do this because we want to know who's attending so that we can identify who we're reaching out to and who we're not reaching out to, who's not participating in the process. And we use this so that we can go back and target our engagement activities for folks who haven't necessarily, or groups who haven't necessarily participated. So the 3 main questions that we asked here were, 1, do you live or work, or neither live nor work in Thousand Oaks? And as you can see, and we organized it by pop-ups, we took this information at 4 of the 7 pop-ups, the survey, again, with about 500 people, and then the workshop with about 100 people or so responded to this question. And what we can see is that it's pretty consistent overall, that 50 to 55% of the people live in Thousand Oaks. At the pop-ups, we got a lot more and the workshop who live and work in Thousand Oaks, and for the survey, we actually got a large number of folks who only work in Thousand Oaks. For all of them, we got a relatively small percentage of people who do not live or work in Thousand Oaks. We also look at tenure to make sure that we're understanding whether people, how long people have lived in the city, and overall, the information we've gotten is skewed towards folks who have been here for 21 or more years, particularly at the workshop and the survey. Some of the interesting information that I saw here is that the pop-ups it looked like they were targeting people who had been here for less than 10 years compared to some of the other survey techniques. And then in terms of age, again, it's skewing a little bit more towards the older populations. The pop-ups did a better job, I think, of getting the younger population. We had one focus group, 14% here, which accounts for the 14% of youth, because we went out to a school. But what we noticed here immediately is that the 18 to 24 demographic did not participate as much in the process. So this points to future engagement activities and where we need to target our efforts. The Spanish-speaking population was hard to reach, and so we're going to have to make more effort to reach that population. We need to take more time and reach out to youth and students. We need to talk to seniors with limited mobility, young professionals, and then as we do our further analysis of engagement, we'll identify other groups. Again, we've started the engagement process. It's not over, and so this information really helps us move forward. Through the process, I want to now switch to what did we hear. And again, I think there was a lot of consistency across the different events. There wasn't necessarily uniform consistency in terms of what the outcomes, but overall, we kept hearing the same things at these different events. So that really allows us to triangulate the information and understand that we're actually getting good information here. So the strengths that community members identified. Number one is the high quality of life. People really like living here. People like the location, the proximity to the mountains and beaches. Open space came up again and again. Nature and outdoor recreation. High quality public and private schools. People felt like the community was family friendly. It's fiscally sound with a strong job and retail base. There's community spirit. And a lot of people mentioned kind of small town character and charm, which is unique for a city that has 130,000 people. It's clean and safe, and a lot of people mentioned arts and culture as being a strength. There were also a lot of mention of the great neighborhoods, the public facilities and services, including the libraries. Oak trees came up again and again. Views, clean air, the diversity of community organizations. People like the shopping. They like the higher education. Overall, people are very happy in the city, and residents really love living in Thousand Oaks. That came up again and again. There were, however, challenges or threats that people discussed. And so as we start the general plan, I'll reiterate again that what we're really trying to do is to identify what are the strengths of the community and not mess those up as we create a plan. And mess up is a technical planning term. And then what are the issues and that we need to overcome, and what are the threats to the things that people love. And so one of the threats or challenges that people talked about was how do we accommodate new development in the city? How do we accommodate growth without impacting the quality of life in the city? People talked about the lack of entertainment options and the lack of community gathering spaces. Housing came up, as I mentioned earlier, again and again and again. People mentioned the high cost of housing, homelessness, lack of housing diversity, and businesses mentioned being unable to attract employees to live in the city because of the high cost of housing. Pedestrian and bicycle facilities and safety came up multiple times, and the lack of a complete bicycle network. Traffic congestion and lack of transit came up quite a bit. While there is a diverse economy, there is a desire to have the economy even more diverse with more higher paying jobs, more diversity of jobs, and a more diverse tax revenue. The changing nature of retail was mentioned, particularly the character and the quality of retail on Thousand Oaks Boulevard and in the mall, and that came up in the public comment. And there are lots of underutilized spaces. There was a concern overall about the city being able to maintain a high level of public services. There were comments about the changing population demographics. There's a population that is aging, and at the same time, there are new residents moving in. And there was concern over wildfire and other natural hazards and concern about climate change. We also asked what opportunities people had thought about for the future, and these are listed here. Again, housing came up quite a bit of the desire to build a diversity of housing types and to build more housing for all income levels, especially lower and middle income housing. In the category of growth and development, residents really talked about the desire to protect the single family, the character of the single family neighborhoods and protect those neighborhoods. A lot of people like just overall that the community is low scale, but and there were also conversations, and this is where there's, I think, going to be some tension about the need to revitalize certain areas of the city with housing and with mixed-use development, but do so in a way that doesn't severely impact the low-scale character of the community or the single-family neighborhoods. Multiple people talked about converting some of the shopping centers into mixed-use areas so that there's more living and working and creating a downtown for the city. There were lots of comments about expanding economic development, about diversity of jobs, partnering with and capitalizing better on the presence of CLU, Cal Lutheran University, and expanding the tax base. With transportation, pedestrian and bicycle improvements were mentioned probably more than any other with transportation. There was also a desire to generally maintain traffic flow and develop innovative traffic solutions. With safety, there was a desire to continue to support police and the low crime rates and to really deal with fire safety and evacuation plans given the fires that have happened here recently. The environment came up a lot, even though it's lower on the list of slides here. That's in no particular order. But expanding parks and open space, protecting trees, and addressing climate change and reducing GHG emissions came up quite a bit, particularly the parks and open space and the natural beauty of the city. And then opportunities to improve the quality of life by attracting more families with young children, constructing more community gathering places, expanding services for seniors and youth, and then, well, great already, expanding arts and cultural activities. All of that information led us to where we are now, which is beginning to draft guiding principles. So guiding principles are a framework for future decision making, and they're the information that we really, the high level principles on which the general plan will be based. They flow directly out of community engagement, and they also provide an anchor when we're talking about and developing policies and needing to make trade-offs about which ones are more important. Preliminarily, for the guiding principles for the general plan, we have broken the guiding principles into two components. The first is community values, and then the second are key strategies. So community values are sort of the goals or the direction of what we want to do, or the value of the community. We want to, here's examples, maintain the family character of Thousand Oaks, preserve open space and natural beauty for community identity and enjoyment. These are values. People value the open space here, the views. People value the family character. And then we think about strategies, about how do we actually get to the community values? How do we make sure that they happen? Those are the high-level strategies. So we will protect and these are just examples, but protect the character and identity of single-family neighborhoods. Preserve and expand parks and open spaces and develop a network of trails around and throughout the city. So again, these are strategies. We based part of these on, and to not lose track of the fact that a few years ago, the city did the 2064 visioning program and actually came up with guiding principles. These guiding principles, these are the top 10 that you see here, but the whole report for Visioning 2064 provides a huge amount of information and I think tracks really closely with what we've been hearing so far in the process. So rest assured that all of that work that the City Council put into creating this is really valuable and will absolutely be used in the process. In developing the guiding principles, we actually, our last GPAC meeting, which was last week, we gave them a similar presentation and the results, and then asked them to work in groups to brainstorm on the community values as well as the key strategies. And so what we have here are real, and then what I did was I went and took that information and created 15 community values and 15 key strategies. This is a first cut. I'm sure I didn't get it right, but it's a place to start from. So the community values, I'll go through these quickly because they really do reflect what we heard from the public. One is a family-friendly community with a high quality of life. Two, an inclusive and welcoming community that embraces ethnic, racial, social, and economic diversity. 3, diverse and high-quality parks, public services, and facilities. 4, the protection of open spaces, oak trees, and natural beauty and habitat. 5, a suburban community that is easy to get around and where you can live, work, shop, and play. 6, the ability to live in the city regardless of income or stage in life. 7, recognition that the community will evolve over time and that change is inevitable. 8, a diversity of safe and convenient mobility options. 9, a diverse and resilient economy. 10, high-quality schools, including public schools and institutes of higher education. 11, a community devoted to arts and culture. 12, a safe and healthy community. 13, a city that recognizes its role as a leader in the Conejo Valley, Ventura County, and the Southern California region. 14, a leader in climate change and environmental sustainability. And then 15, an active and involved community. Flowing from this were more specific strategies about how to implement the community values. So these somewhat parallel what you heard before, and again, we created 15 of them because that seemed like a good number. First is create a diversity of housing types and affordability levels, especially mixed use and multifamily development. 2, protect single-family neighborhoods from increased development. 3, create more meeting and gathering spaces to enhance community. 4, build a downtown for the city. 5, revitalize underutilized land, including malls, older shopping centers, and Thousand Oaks Boulevard, with a diverse mix of uses, including residential. 6, expand the number and diversity of entertainment options. 7, expand the number and diversity of jobs in biotech, healthcare, and education, and attract new jobs and businesses to the city. 8, improve public transportation. 9, create a complete and safe bicycle network. 10, improve walkability in the city. 11, preserve and expand parks and open spaces, including the preservation of oak trees, completing a ring of open space around the city, and building new parks as the population grows. 12, continue and expand the high quality and diversity of public services provided by the city, focusing on youth, seniors, and residents with special needs. 13, attract a wider diversity of residents to the city, including families with children and young professionals. 14, pursue strategies to reduce the city's environmental impact, including GHG emissions, reduced water use, and reduced energy use. And then 15, protect the city against future wildfires. I know that was a lot, but as I said, we have collected a huge amount of information throughout this process. The feedback that we would love to get from you this evening is whether you have any comments or questions or feedback on the community engagement that we have completed to date. And again, this is only the beginning of the engagement process. Second, what additional guiding principles, which are comprised of community values and key strategies, should be added? Should any be modified or deleted? And then last, do you have any other thoughts about the general plan update process? As we move into feedback, I'll just say that I think while particularly with engagement, while we have done a huge amount of engagement to date, we have spoken with, I think, over 1,000 people who we've engaged in the process. Way more than that know about the process. We can always do better, and we're going to continue to do better. The feedback we've gotten has been really positive about the city doing this process, positive about having a community conversation, and that the city is willing and wants to listen to the members of the community. And so while I know that what I presented this evening was a lot of information, we felt it was really important to feed back what we heard from the community in as true a form as we could. Clearly, it doesn't cover everything that people said. There's so much there, but we wanted to be as true as we could to the process and to what people said. And with that in mind, we do have on the website all of the notes from all of our meetings, including when people wrote comments down. We actually have scanned those and put those on the website as well. So anyone who wants can actually go and look at all of the comments that we've received so far in the process. Again, we think that this transparency is important at community building and building trust in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That was awesome. Council, you have any questions for any of the fellows up there? Councilmember Engler?
Thank you so much for this update. It's so important that we get the word out to everybody that this is not the council's general plan. This is not the staff's general plan. It's the people of Thousand Oaks' general plan, and I encourage everybody to join that 1,000 people who have already put their word in, and get give us your input. Where do you want the city to be in 2020, 45? Let's all get on this and make it happen. With that said, in terms of, did you want feedback on some of our guiding principles? Is that what you had asked for tonight?
It's time for questions of the guys.
I'll hold it for a while.
All right, fair enough. Councilmember Jones?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate all the community outreach. I've attended several of these meetings, and I'm always happy to see the public involved. That was the way it happened originally, and I'm glad we still have the interest in trying to improve the community even more. I'm glad to see that desirable place to live was high on the list. I think some of these goals are a little contradictory.
Councilmember Jones, if I could, I meant to say something before we went to the council for questions. Tonight, it's critical that if we're asking questions simply about what they've shared, but as far as our view and our vision, this isn't the time for it, because we want the community to have primary input. So if all of us just grasp that.
Right.
After
I was
the
trying
public
to
speaking.
comment on
All right.
the guiding principles, et cetera. What would you say is an overriding of all of these concerns and the guiding principles? And so, were there any, say, 2 or 3 of these that you might say were overriding concerns more than others?
Yeah, I think there are. We haven't done a thorough scientific analysis, so this is going to be my own impression from the events that I've attended. So I'll sort of couch it with that at first. But the one is, again, the appreciation for the quality of life in the community here that really came out as being really important. The second is the open space, and the fact that there is so much open space that is here, and the public facilities and services, which I think are part of that whole quality of life. The third is, while there was and I think this is one of the big tensions, and I know you started by saying there's some contradictory things in the guiding principles, there are tensions that I think we're seeing here, which is that there's beautiful and amazing single-family neighborhoods here, but we did hear a lot of people talk about housing and the need for more housing and a diversity of housing types, including multifamily housing. And then transportation came up a lot, particularly cycling and walking, and then destinations and places for people to be and to hang out in the downtown.
Well, do you see any implications for that? As I've stated many times, I'd like to see anybody, with a decent job, or like a policeman or a teacher, or somebody in the service area, be able to live here. But we know that with the current prices, as you have shown on your survey, that would be very difficult.
Yeah.
And what occurs to me is that you say the overriding thing is that many people, not everybody perhaps, are very happy and contented with what we have now. One of the things that is a high priority, as you know, and you've listed it a couple times, is the idea of a downtown area in this vicinity. Where was that on your list of priority? In other words, where did people put that as opposed to other goals for the community?
Let me actually pause here for a second. The first comment you made was about was beginning to get into policy and what are the implications of some of the comments.
The first thing I asked after I was I was educated by the mayor was, what is the overriding concern.
Right. Well, but I just want to say that there are some of the implications of making changes and the ideas that people have here that I presented on that they said about things they want to see. Those are things that we're going to be getting to in the next phase, and that we are also going to, as part of the next phase, going to do a prioritization exercise to understand what people's priorities are. And so some of the questions that you're asking, what we wanted to do in this phase was to just kind of ask very broadly what people wanted and pull it back together. Then we're going to take that information and do a prioritization. So we'll actually be able to get better information to answer the questions you're asking as we're moving forward. But they're important questions. I think we only have sort of my observations, and I think we're going to get better information about that coming up.
Well, can't you derive from all these meetings and all the conversation really the sort of the overall feeling or an overall sense of where the people would like us to go from here? I have the feeling that a lot of people are rather satisfied. That it would tend to indicate to me that we don't really want any dramatic changes. Maybe I've reached a wrong conclusion. I know I'm supposed to be asking questions, Mr. Mayor, but the question is, how much change do you think people want in this community?
I think we're going to get to that question in the process, because I think that we did hear people are happy. We also heard that people want, not everyone, but there were quite a number of people who wanted to see change in limited areas of the city. And so I think there were actually I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot really said they wanted to see change in different parts of the city. And the question becomes, and that was one of my first comments, and the sort of this tension of how do you grow and allow for change while maintaining the character and quality of life of the city? And I think that's kind of the main one of the main challenges that we have in this process.
Just one final question, Mr. Mayor. What did they talk about? The population? We're just under 130,000. Were there any expressions of what an optimum population might be for our city?
There were a few. Some wanted to see the city grow, and some said this enough. We have plenty now, and we don't need any more. So again, we got a range, but very few came and said a number.
No, very few said what?
Said a specific number for a population.
Not a range or anything.
No, it really didn't come up, and that'll be coming up later.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Adam.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the staff report says you're looking for feedback and direction. Is that correct?
Yeah, we wanted to give you an overview of where we are and accept any feedback, because as you talked about, it's a community-driven process.
Okay. Well, here's some feedback. And you stated this yourself. I really hope you devise a way to get more young people involved in this. 73% of the people are 45 or older, and 30% of that are 65 or older. Got to hear from some young people. 1%. You got to come up with something to get the young people involved. Number two, the Center for Economic Research and Forecast at Acaloo put out a report recently about Ventura County as a whole. Could you read that, please, and see if your committee would take a look at that as well? It's really telling. I'm not sure how much of it applies to TO, but I'd like you to take that into consideration. Glad to see that you're focusing on housing. In the next year, Thousand Oaks is the third lowest housing start of the 10 cities. There's only two below us, Ojai and Port Hueneme. So housing would be important, and it shows in the survey. Only, according to that report that I just read, only about 30% of Ventura County residents can even afford to buy a house. So I'd like you to get some feedback on that. And you mentioned greenhouse gases, which I think is on a lot of people's mind, the environment. There's a website called, you've probably seen it, called Walk Score. And I ran my address in there. I live in a typical Thousand Oaks community. And 100 is the most walkable community you can be in, or most walkable address. Mine got an 11. Completely car dependent. Any errand, according to this site, that I would do, I have to do it by car. So let's get some feedback on that, how we can try to turn the tide and not be so car dependent in Thousand Oaks. The overall rating for Thousand Oaks was 33. We're in the bottom third when it comes to walkability, and I think that's on people's minds. When you talk about young people, too, and I don't know if this was in the survey or not, but I'm concerned about this migration that we may be having in Thousand Oaks, this net migration out. I'd like to find out a little bit more from the general plan update about who's leaving the city. Is it young people? And who's coming in? Because I think that's very important to the long-term sustainability of the city. Which brings me to, and this goes all the way back to who's responding to the survey. We're a rapidly aging community. So is the whole county. You know, we're about 25% seniors now. And I've said many times, in 1970, we had a median age here in the city of 22. Now it's 43, and we're way above the average. Let's get some input on, you know, how this general plan update would deal with this huge influx of seniors that we're having, and where do we bring in the young people to help sustain that group. And I know these aren't questions, Mayor, but jobs, too. I didn't see much in there about jobs, a little, but I'm concerned that we're not creating the kind of high-paying jobs that we need to be. Information technology, finance, we seem to be always into the education and healthcare end of it, which is fine. I mean, that's great, but you know, we need to create the kind of city that can attract high-paying jobs. And we're trying to do this with the biotech hub that we're trying to create, but it's going to involve housing, and it's going to involve a lot of other aspects. So I'd like to see that addressed. And then, I mean, after all, Amgen sent 500 people to Tampa because we didn't have the housing and we didn't have the affordability they needed. So there went 500 high-paying jobs. We need to bring high-paying jobs in. And then finally, in that survey that I read, they had an interesting thing called the 2019 Metro Monitor. And out of 100 of the largest metro areas in the United States, we're in one called the Oxnard-Ventura Thousand Oaks area. As far as economic prosperity and growth came, we came in 96 out of 100. 96 out of 100. So let's throw that out there to the committee and see if they want to grapple with something there. Because what I'm afraid of here, you know, we always talk about this quality of life in Thousand Oaks. We've got to protect this quality of life, and I'm all for it. I'm enjoying it myself. I just want to be sure that this definition of quality of life is accessible to all and is becoming less and less accessible to many of the people that live here in the city. It's accessible to people that have been here for 30 or 40 years and they're sitting on a house that's worth $1.5 million, but what about some of the younger people? Is this quality of life that we're trying to protect, is that accessible to them too? That's what I'm trying to get at. So there's my observations, and see if we can't work that in there. Thanks.
Councilmember Bill de la Peña.
Thank you, Mayor McCoy. I do have a couple of questions, and that is the age range of the people that so far you have been in touch with. And obviously, as you pointed out, the age range 18 to 24 is very low participation. And I am wondering, first of all, how we can reach those young people other than going to CLU, using Instagram, Twitter, maybe not so much Facebook, but Twitter, Instagram. I don't think Snapchat can help us in this, but how are we reaching them, and what do we think they could contribute? Many of them will be obviously high school students, college students. Some of them are not. And so what is it that we're actually trying to have them contribute. Councilmember Adam mentioned we need to reach those people and we need to provide housing. I'm just wondering what sort of feedback are we expecting from that age group compared to perhaps other outreach programs that you have conducted outside of this area?
To just answer initially, we, as I said, what we did in this first tranche of engagement was the meetings that we had. We did some trying to target different demographics, which is why we had a pop-up at Tarantula Hill. But I think we need to, and we just finished this, so now we're in the analysis phase. So the list that I gave you and that you see here on the slide are areas where we need to spend more time thinking about it. So I don't have specific answers, but definitely the high schools, CLU, youth groups are all, and businesses that have young professionals are all groups we really need to spend more time, and they're harder to reach in a process like this. These numbers are not atypical of communities, but it just means that we need to do more work in doing this, and that's. We got a lot of great information. We had a lot of great conversations, but we're still going to need to do more and do more engagement. In terms of what we're going to hear, I couldn't speculate, and I shouldn't speculate on what people are going to say.
I'm just wondering one of the reasons why I'm speculating, because I'm thinking 18 to 24-year-olds are super busy with either homework from high school or projects at the university, or they're working full-time, and I'm not quite sure what their outlook is, whether they are able to buy a home in Thousand Oaks. I would imagine not. But on the issue of housing, I have to point out that Ventura County is still the least expensive area to buy a house in, much less expensive than Los Angeles County and much less expensive than Orange County. So I just want that to be out there, that this is still a more affordable place to live than our neighbors to the south. And with that said, I think so far I'm very happy with the results that we have so far, but I do look forward to getting feedback from that particular age group. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, let's move to public speakers. Our first speaker is Sean Maradian. No? I'm sorry?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
I was going to defer to Mr. Kasdan. He's also a speaker. He has to attend an event, so can I
have
go after
him on here too.
Do you?
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Kasdan, good evening, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to the speaker series. It starts at 8 o'clock.
Understood.
So I'm going to see General John Kelly. Anyhow, my name is Steve Kasdan. I'm a property owner on Thousand Oaks Boulevard. I'm a member of the board of TOBA, and I really feel very strongly about the future for Thousand Oaks. The presentation about a healthy community, I was here. It's right on target. Coincidentally, that day, I had lunch with my nephew, who's on staff at Yale University, and he was here. I had no idea what we were going to be talking about, and we're talking about a healthy lifestyle, a healthy community, exactly what was said here. And you need a healthy community where people have somewhere to go. They're not sitting in their house watching TV all day. It all related, and my nephew, the MD at Yale University, agreed 100%. So it's very, very important. I think there's a lot of room to improve this community. I love Thousand Oaks. I've been buying real estate here. I'm moving my business from LA here. My daughter is a teacher, and she lives in Thousand Oaks. My two grandchildren attend Cal Lutheran University. I have a stake in this community. So I think we need balanced growth, and there's a lot of improvement to be made. Also, I want to say people don't think parking is important. It is very important. So I would love to see the city have some structures, maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 along the boulevard. It's a long street. It's, 3 miles long. So we want to encourage pedestrian traffic, people who have a place to go. Restaurants are essential. You need nightlife, and there's so much room without ruining Thousand Oaks, what it is. I grew up in Santa Monica. I saw the growth there, too much growth. My parents had a store on the Santa Monica Mall. They were part of the group of people that said, let's put in parking, but let's pay for it. So the property owners paid for all the structures on the Santa Monica Mall. It was great for the community, but it went too far. So we don't want to do that in Thousand Oaks. So balanced growth. I think to have a healthy community is to be able to live here and work here. The most stressful thing that I go through is traffic. So if people have to commute to jobs, we don't have housing, that's not going to work. So my theme is balanced growth, but growth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Sean, do you want to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't want to waive my time. I just want to
got you.
accommodate him. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Sean Rodian, lifelong resident of Thousand Oaks and the president of the Thousand Oaks Boulevard Association. I want to take a moment really to just state some observations independently of what we've observed over the last couple of months with the general plan outreach process with Ramey and Associates and along with staff's efforts. First off, the volume of information that we just received is truly remarkable for such a short period of time. I mean, all these workshops, all these pop-ups, all this community engagement, it's all happened in 2 months. Over 1,000 people engaged. I personally attended a handful of these events, and I know that we spoke to a lot of our members and residents about their feedback. And truly, you heard Mr. Ramey talk about how appreciative people were to be given the opportunity to participate, how many people had never even understood what a community or general plan update would entail, how educated they were on the process. So we were really encouraged. You know, I wanted to go into some detail about some other observations about what we heard that are important to the community, but the report was so thorough with so much information that I really won't reiterate, but I think it does show a good self-reflection of where we are. I think the tone that I noticed from a lot of our community outreach engagements were unity. A lot of people wanted the same thing. There was a lot of meetings of the mind. I can't believe the amount of staff time that's been allocated to support this process. It's truly remarkable. So what I would say, you know, in all is that you guys are doing a fantastic job. I'm very happy with how we see the process going. I think you've got a lot of good governing principles to really focus around. And thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. We have one more public speaker, Chase Rashid. Chase, you're batting cleanup. Good evening.
Hi. Chase Rashid, Thousand Oaks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. A couple of things about the 18 to 24 people not giving much feedback to a larger extent. The 25 to 34. The simpler answer for it is that a lot of younger people find this sort of process boring if they're not the type of person that likes civics. They're not gonna show up. So I know the Canyon Club, they do borderline nights. They've picked up a lot of the young people that went there. I don't know, maybe there could be an arrangement made with that. So to do a pop-up there or wherever some of the restaurants and bars that have picked up some of those people are going, maybe that can be done. And as for housing, one of the things I mentioned in the last GPAC meeting was figuring out about tiny houses, because I saw a report on Fox 11 where some young people were building and selling tiny houses, and I think that is an important thing to think about. How is that going to fit into zoning? Should it be allowed here? And also apartments built for people who don't have cars and are okay not having a car. If it means housing, they would be okay using public transportation. I think a lot of people would make that trade-off. So thank you.
Thank you, Chase. Well, that concludes our public speakers. Council, any more discussion? Mayor Pro Tem, you already had yours, so we're not going to let you. No, I'm just kidding. Councilmember Bill de la Peña.
Thank you. I also wanted to touch briefly on environmental factors. I wanted to find out whether Thousand Oaks, along with other neighboring cities, is still in violation of EPA regulations, in particular with ozone. Whether that has become worse over time. I mean, we have a lot of electric cars, but I'm just wondering, asthma and environmental pollution was being mentioned in your presentation. I saw Dr. Cox earlier today, but I guess not here.
I actually don't have the answer to that question tonight. I can get back to you. It'll be in the existing conditions work.
Okay, we're still finalizing existing conditions.
Yeah.
Thank you, because health is important, and I wanted to mention that. I think that a lot of the feedback that you have received from the community make perfect sense. Some of them, however, will be difficult to implement and might require a ton of money as well. Especially, I would love to have bike paths all throughout and connecting to the open space. We do have a bicycle master plan, and obviously that's something probably we should revisit, whether the bicycle master plan has been completed. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, just one quick observation. I was struck by what Councilwoman Bill de la Peña said about 18 to 24-year-olds. And it seems to me that with the prices of housing now, as opposed to when I came here many years ago, 18 to 24-year-olds could afford to put a down payment on a house because they were costing $20,000 to $30,000. Today, frankly, if you have 18 to 24-year-olds, they're probably living at home with their parents because they're not able to get into the housing market as yet. And I think a lot of these goals are marvelous, but some of them are a little bit contradictory to want things that are going to actually add to the cost of housing to make this a more beautiful place. But I'm worried too, Councilwoman de la Peña, about the younger people, and I just don't know how that's going to work. That's all.
Mr. Ramey, I can encourage you with getting access to that demographic in the community, number of connections with, at least in the church community, there's a bunch of youth groups that I can connect you with. So, Mr. Down, you had something you want to say?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before, as we begin to wrap, I want to make a few quick comments. One, I wanted to make it clear that the draft guiding principles that were presented to you tonight were based on broad community input. They were crafted by the General Plan Advisory Committee, but they are based on this body of public thought and recommendations that we heard over the past several months. Also, just to also make it clear that while we clearly intend to reach out to younger residents of the city, all viewpoints from all demographic sectors of the community are equally important. And then just finally, I would just like to thank Matt and his team and a very large city team that worked on this project over the past few months. I know that this is really just the start of the general plan update, but it's been a very busy period. At times we were holding public input events every several days, and I just wanted to thank the entire team here and perhaps most importantly, the community for participating through this wide variety of media and also through the online survey. So it's been very gratifying to see the public involvement to date. Thank you.
Here, here. Well done. Matt, go ahead.
Quickly, I'm sorry. I just realized I forgot to talk about next steps, which are important as maybe a good closing here. So continued engagement. We're going to refine and finalize the guiding principles. These will come back to you. They're working, living principles. Really, they were developed over the last few days, so there's a lot of work to do on those. We're going to publish the existing conditions reports, and then we're jumping into two important phases, the alternatives development process, and then starting to talk about policy topics such as housing and economic development, both topics that came up from all of you this evening as being really important. So this is where we're shifting from the collecting information to starting to analyze information and understanding what choices are that the city can make and what that means. We have a General Plan Advisory Committee meeting coming up on December 12th. I believe we're about to finalize the date. It's going to be on looking at if there's going to, for where growth can go in the city, and then also housing, and diving in deep into housing policy. And then we're going to have our next community forum in late January. And then we'll be coming back to you periodically to keep getting feedback and give you updates on where we are in the process. And it's been great so far, so I appreciate the community and staff's time with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bill de la Peña, did you want to make a motion?
Actually, I would like to make a motion, but I did have one more question, if I may, and that is, I am glad that staff is incorporating the Visioning 2064 guiding principles, so which we conducted a few years ago. And then my question is, are these other guiding principles going to be subcategories of the visioning principles, or how will they be implemented? And then the second portion is, you are working with the arts consultants who are here tonight, right, on including their feedback from their outreach efforts. Okay. And I'm glad to see that arts and culture is important to the residents with whom you have been in touch with. Thank you. That was. I can make the motion. Should they answer the question first, and then I can make the motion to approve? Is it
whatever you want to do?
It's more than a receive and file, right? It is a receive and file. Okay. And we did provide
perhaps
feedback.
I can respond to that. The guiding principles, the summary was provided to the advisory committee, and obviously it's been available to the community for the past 4 years. Those are being considered as part of the body of information to craft the draft guiding principles. So it's essentially being considered and will be melded in with the thought process that is crafting the final guiding principles.
Wonderful. And with that, I just make the motion to receive and file with the feedback that you received tonight, and to come back to council at a later date. When is it? No.
I think that motion includes a vote. So, Madam Clerk, will you prepare the vote? Thank you.
The motion carries 5-0.
All right. Well, Mr. Powers, do you have any follow-up?
Just a reminder that we have our next meeting on the Tuesday, the 3rd of December, and that meeting will be our annual reorganization meeting. Earlier that day, we will have our 2019 State of the City Address and luncheon up the CLU Gilbert Sports Arena that we heard about earlier today. And just a reminder, we will have back-to-back meetings, so that is our reorg meeting on the 3rd, and then we have a meeting on the 10th of December. And that will be our final business meeting of the calendar year 2019. Wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving.
Ms. Noonan, do you have a closed session to report?
Yes, I do. It's, one closed session, existing litigation, Piazza versus City of Thousand Oaks, case number 56, 2018-00513-538, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. It is not likely I'll have anything to report.
I think the old joke was the two happiest days of a person's life is when they buy a boat and they sell it. I think it's when you become mayor and you get to get off. So this is my last meeting as mayor. So, yeah. And that concludes. Thank you, everybody. Good night.